Good morning. This is Hugh Massey from DNA Behaviour. In today's webinar, I'm going to take you through the Business DNA one-page factor report. What I want to do is just outline to you how to use this report for greater effect. What I have found is the one-page factor report is my go-to report, but remember, I'm also the founder, developer, creator of this business. So I understand what's behind all of these factors and sub-factors at a very deep level. But nevertheless, what I find is that looking at this report gives me a very good, quick MRI scan of the person that I'm going to be reviewing or facilitating through some kind of coaching or mentoring or feedback session, or just an analysis for hiring purposes. I like to get beyond the factors and into the sub-factors because, again, this helps me see each person's uniqueness at an even greater level. As we've already said in trainings before and in prior webinars, the unique styles really are different for each person. And what I'm really saying there is that two people can come out as an engager. So Helen Jones here is an engager, but another engager could be quite different in some areas. And so whilst they will broadly behave the same way in being quite outgoing, communicative, there'll be a number of other differences. So the one-page factor report helps you mine into what those differences will be. And this gets more and more important when you are coaching somebody at a deeper level and they might be struggling with a particular area of their life or work, or you're looking to hire someone. Then this becomes even more important. So just to recap here, Helen Jones is an engager. So that's one of our 10 unique styles. And that's been made up of all of the items that are in this one-page factor report. The one-page factor report shows the 8 factors. So we've got the commanding factor here that then shows the take charge trait here on the right, and then the cooperative trait on the left. When the cooperative trait is stronger because the score is under 50, then the green box here is highlighted to make it easier for reading and analysis. The score shown there is the T-score. So Helen has a T-score of 42 on cooperative. And she is in the top 21% of the universe in being cooperative. So that's actually she's in, the top 79%. So you need to look at that percentage score differently there. So she's in the top 79% of being cooperative, or more cooperative than 79% of the population. Then we show the sub-factors, and you can see those highlighted here. In our system, there are 8 factors and 24 sub-factors. So for the commanding factor here, there are 3 sub-factors. And you can see that Helen is quite consensus seeking with a T-score of 36. Interestingly, she is quite self-reliant with a T-score of 57. And then she is diplomatic with a T-score of 42. So generally, if somebody is, for example, cooperative like Helen is, with the factor scoring out on the left-hand side, so she's stronger on the cooperative side of it, the cooperative trait, you would expect all three of the sub-factors to be on that side as well, or certainly 2 out of the 3 to be there. on that side, and she's quite strong on, as I've said, on the consensus seeking with a T-score of 36. Also, just to remind you on the strength of the scoring, scores between 45 and 55 in middle range, the person will be quite flexible in that area. They can adapt their behavior. Scores above 55 are getting stronger, and scores below 45 are getting progressively stronger. So they measure out to 80 and to 20, and they're measured out on a bell curve. So there's fewer and fewer people once you get beyond 40 going down to 20, and above 60 going down to 80. Now, as you'll have already been trained, we are measuring natural hardwired behavior. That behavior will get more intensive, more hardwired, more fixed, the stronger the scores are. So a strong score would be above 60. That's the top 16% of the population. Above 70 is the top 2% of the population. So it's progressively very strong. So when I read these reports, I'm looking for the stronger behaviors. And then it's the same on the other side. So a score under 40 is very strong. Again, that's the top 16% on that side. And under 30 is the top 2% on that side. So I'm looking for scores on the left-hand and the right-hand side that are in that stronger area, starting with the stronger scores. So for example, Helen with a consensus seeking sub-factor score of 36, that's a very strong score. So she will be in her behavior very consensus seeking, very team orientated, and will generally follow the leader. That's what that's really saying there. Interestingly enough, though, she's got a sub-factor on self-reliant, where she's prepared to work by herself and independently think a little bit more. That isn't a contradiction, but at the surface it could be perceived as that. But if you didn't have the sub-factors, we would never see that difference. So she's happy to follow the lead, but she also likes to, and is happy and able to work by herself and think for herself, which is, is a strength for her. And then we can see, for example, that Helen is very strong on outgoing, and we've got the asterisk there, which is indicating it's one of her top 2 factors, and she's got a score of 71. So she is inside that top 2% of being outgoing. So you can see she is more outgoing than 98% of the population, and that is dominated by her communicative score. So remember that also the 3 sub-factor scores here will not necessarily average out to the 71. The 3 of those scores mathematically are averaging out lower, but when you take the 3 combined, then in terms of the measurement, it would be rare that someone is this strong. So that's why we get to an outgoing factor of 71. And just so that you have a deeper buy-in to what's going on in the build-up of the reports, the outgoing factor is measured from 24 of the items out of the 138 that we measure, and each of the sub-factors has a lower number of items, ranging from sort of 6 to 12 items are used to measure a sub-factor. So the sub-factors in a way are a bit more volatile, they're a bit more specific. But all the words in the or items that are measuring the sub-factors are contained in the overall factor scoring here for the outgoing. So that's an important point to remember. And if we go further down, we can look at the fast pace. So on this, she's scored up strong on this side. So she is very fast paced. She'd be more fast paced than 12% of the population. And the other way to look at that is that 88% of the population would be more patient than she is. Spontaneous, again, Helen is very strong on spontaneous. So Helen has some quite strong scores when you start looking at the factors here being below the 40, and then you can look at those sub-factors that are below 40. So you can see down here, for example, her improviser score at 31, that's very strong. So she's good at improvising, making do with situations that she's got. She's very instinctive in the way she operates. She is a very intuitive person. So that's a very strong sub-factor that's there. And you can see for the rational, she's quite rational as well. My goal isn't to explain every sub-factor this morning. It's more to give you the framework for looking at the report so that you know how to go and mine for the information that you want. And then what I always suggest to everybody is when you're using these reports in any kind of feedback session, is that you use the strongest factors to ask questions. So you could ask, for example, here, Helen about the instinctive trait, rather than saying, Helen, you're very instinctive. Once you could say to Helen, frame it up as a question, tell me how you've used your instincts in making a key decision, and let her talk about that. And probably what you're going to find out is that she hasn't used a lot of analysis and research. She's just gone from her gut feeling. And we talk about that and whether that's been a win or cost her something. And whether, again, we always talk about, we want people to use their strengths or their talents. Being instinctive is a talent for Helen. But if it's overplayed, it can become a problem. It can become a struggle, and if not dealt with, a weakness. So the stronger the strength, the stronger the blind spot. So whilst being instinctive is a great talent for Helen, if she doesn't know how to manage it, that becomes a problem. And so you could see that could be a performance risk for Helen here. And so that's what we're really looking for, is the performance strengths and the performance struggles, and they're coming from the strongest factor scores and the sub-factor scores. Helen likes openness, so she prefers open communication, open dialogue in the workplace. If that's not there, probably that would be a violation of her values, and that would be a problem. And we know from the outgoing score above, she's someone who'd like to talk and be able to express herself. So to not have that in the workplace would be a problem for Helen. She's a reasonably content person, and we can see, she likes flexibility in her life. In a way, a fairly balanced life would be important for Helen. And then we can see the factors down here. So moderate on the risk taking. What I find interesting sometimes is to look at the difference between the bold decision making and the risk tolerance. So Helen would be reasonably cautious in jumping off the ledge and making a decision, but whatever decision she makes, she can live with the consequences of. I think that's always a good thing to look at for any person, particularly around decision making, and depending on the consequences for them as well. And then what we can see here is that Helen's second strongest score is creative. She's got an asterisk there. That's indicating it's one of the two strongest scores, and she's extremely creative individual. And this is where I bring out the point that for engagers are not all the same, in the sense that some engagers can be quite strong on pioneering, they're a bit more goal driven. Some engagers will be risk takers, and some will be creative. And this is often in these bottom three factors where you start to really see the difference between one engager and another engager. So I hope you found this session useful for you as a framework for getting an MRI scan of the person that you would be facilitating. So in this case, it's Helen Jones, and just mining in further. And again, I look at every measurement in here. So there's 8 factors and 24 sub-factors. Is an opportunity to ask the person a question, to facilitate them at a deeper level, to uncover where their success might come from or should be coming from if they're using their talents, and where they might be derailing their performance.